Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, over the past few years, Republicans have waged constant attacks on you. Donald Trump has said you are totally compromised, a political hitman, a left-wing radical, a criminal, a fully weaponized monster, and that you should be considered mentally deranged and thrown out of the country. Just this week, he called you a sick bastard. Unfortunately, the rules of decorum prevent me from saying what I think of Donald Trump. But he is not the only one to launch attacks against you. Chairman Jordan has accused you of abusive surveillance and accused you and your team of partisan and politically motivated prosecutions. Despite the mountain of evidence that you laid out in the special counsel's report and in your court filings, President Trump's supporters are convinced that the only reason your team tried to hold him accountable is because you have a vendetta against him. I want to address these allegations today. You have had a long and distinguished career with the Justice Department, including serving as the chief of DOJ's Public Integrity Section for 5 years. While leading the Public Integrity Section, you led investigations and prosecution of public figures and political leaders from both parties, Republicans and Democrats. Can you give us a couple of examples?
Sorry about that. During my time as the Chief of Public Integrity, I investigated cases involving both Republicans and Democrats. The standard in all of those cases was the same: follow the facts and the law. Didn't matter what party you were in, it mattered the facts of the case. In doing that, there were cases I brought against Democrats and cases I brought against Republicans. There were also cases that I investigated and did not bring against Democrats and Republicans. Party affiliation played no role in my investigations. I can think of multiple cases of prominent members of Congress that we investigated who were Republicans who, upon reviewing the law and the facts, I decided not to go forward in those cases. And the same could be said with people on the Democratic side. I've always tried to follow the facts and the law in my career.
When it comes to deciding whether to pursue a criminal prosecution of an individual, what factors do you consider?
The primary factors are the facts and the law. As a federal prosecutor, in making a prosecutorial decision, you're guided by the federal principles of prosecution, which guide one not only to look at the facts and the law, but the federal interests. And that is exactly what we did in this case, as set forth in my final report.
Does partisan politics play a role in your decision whether or not to prosecute someone?
None.
To be clear, did partisan politics play a role in your decision to charge Donald Trump?
It did not.
What does it do to the justice system if political leaders place pressure on prosecutors to file charges against their political enemies? What are the implications if prosecution decisions are based on politics, not the law?
I think it weakens the rule of law in our country because it weakens the mechanism for us to prosecute, among other things, corruption. When there is political prosecutions targeting people because they're enemies of the president, the department loses credibility and it can't do its job in all sorts of cases.
According to your deposition before this committee, it sounds like your problem was not determining if you had enough evidence to charge Donald Trump, but rather that you might have had too much evidence and struggled to determine how to present a clear narrative to a jury. How would you characterize the evidence against Mr. Trump about inciting an insurrection against the laws of this country? Did you have too much?
Well, with respect to presenting the case that we charged, one of the central challenges was trying to present that in a concise way because we did have so many witnesses. Some of the most powerful witnesses were witnesses who, in fact, were fellow Republicans who had voted for Donald Trump, who had campaigned for him, and who wanted him to win the election. These included state officials, people who worked on his campaign, and advisors. I will say, however, with respect to the charge of insurrection, we did not charge that. As I set forth in my report, well, I believe that there is, courts have found that that was an insurrection and that there's a reasonable interpretation, a reasonable prosecutor could interpret the evidence to support that charge. I chose not to do that, looking at the facts and the law, I thought the charges we brought were appropriate given the evidence that we had.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your decades-long public service and for working tirelessly to uphold the rule of law. Those who attack and smear you and your team in order to protect Donald Trump should be ashamed of themselves. I yield back.
Wait just a second. We have one more thing to share.
We want to say a heartfelt thank you for watching and supporting PBS News.
Without you, we simply wouldn't be able to provide the news and the information that you trust.
So thank you from everybody here at PBS News.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.